I'm Judge Margaret McEwen and a member of the World Justice Project Board. Let me give you a sense of what will happen today. I'm going to introduce very briefly each project, and the important part is you'll then hear from the project presenters. And you know from walking around in the auditorium the enormous work that has gone into these projects. And of course, this is just a handful of the many, many projects that were submitted. As one of the judges and having the opportunity to look at this in advance, I have to say I was really humbled and staggered by the range of projects. So what you'll see this morning is going to be like going to a smorgasbord, and you won't know which project is the one you want to align with, because each one of them is great. Each one of them reaches out to marginalized and needy communities, but importantly, each one of them does it in a very, very different way. So the first project that we'll address this morning is from Burundi, and it's called Help a Child Burundi. We have from Burundi, we have Clement Mubisi, and this project is also associated with the name of Building Bridges Burundi. There's actually a consortium of some 13 different organizations that created this. He is the country director, has spent 10 years in development and human rights work, and has worked in 24 countries. So he brings a real a range of experience to this kind of project. He himself was in a refugee camp, and I can happily say now he's director of this program and has 3 children. The particular project is based on a premise that impunity is really a root cause of violence and instability in Burundi. This project is aimed at breaking these cycles of violence and try to improve the life going forward, as well as having a recognition, a reconciliation in dealing with the past. So the project focuses on Burundi's informal justice system, and that's a term that you've heard more than once during this symposium, and that's the informal justice system. Not everything takes place within the walls of a courthouse or within the walls of a ministry or an official building. The target audience here is youth, and they come from diverse social, ethnic, and religious backgrounds. What has happened is the group has been able to organize various self-help groups and various themes for these young people. And with this grassroots organization, there is local ownership. And so you really see the impact in program after program. And we're going to hear what that has meant to the children of Burundi. So I'd like to now invite Mr. Mubisi to the podium to present his program. Thank you.
Good morning. So my name is Clement Mubisi, and I am here to represent a consortium of 13 organizations who implemented the Dutsimbataza Mahoro, or Strengthen Peace, Building Bridges in Burundi, or BBB in short. But I'm here mostly because I want to tell you some stories from the field, from the people who took part in this 5-year program that was funded by the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And one of these stories is of distress, sadness, anger, resentment that happened. So this is Violet. I'll start with her. In 1998, there was a widespread of violence in Burundi, ethnic violence, that saw her families being slaughtered, 30 members of her family. She was only 10, and she witnessed that. She barely survived the killing herself. And over the past 19 years, she lived in anger, as I said, resentment, because she was living in the same community with the perpetrators. She saw them becoming more powerful and powerful and powerful. She couldn't confront them, as she was a young girl, very vulnerable, alone, poor. So she really grew up as a very troublesome kid. At school, she was violent. She had really a very bad past. Then Violet happened to be enrolled in our program, the BBB. And through the program, I'll show you which kind of activities we did with her. And then one day, Violet decided to change her past. I personally can relate with Violet because I was only 2 years old when my father was killed in 1979, and then I ended up in a refugees camp in the eastern part of Congo, only to return back in Burundi in 2017 as a country director for Help a Child. It's a lot of story. I went through different countries, including South Africa, where I learned a lot about reconciliation. So in Burundi, this has been happening over and over and over and over. Some of these conflicts are intergenerational conflicts that are passed from a child, from a grandfather to a father, from a father to a child, and so on. So it was on Easter, Violet said, what if my parents were actually, sorry, before I get there, let me just talk to you about what causes conflict in Burundi. As you know from different parts of the world, the economics. So Burundi is one of the 5 poorest countries in the world. Over 12 million people who are fighting over resources that don't exist at all. So there's a lot of manipulation of young people by politicians. There are also social factor. Social cohesion is not almost there because people are really fighting over resources, as I said. There's a huge corruption of the government. That's not only Burundi. I think in other parts of country, Africa. The judicial system is very weak in Burundi, weak to the point it does not exist. Then we've got some intergenerational conflict, as I said, which are passed over from generation to generation. There is a really anger, people want to revenge, right? Then, within the program, that's when Violet understood that I need to live with these people. We need each other so that we can move on. And I don't want to pass this anger, this conflict to my kids. And one day she said in a session, what if my parents were wiped by the river? Will I hate the river forever? What if they were hit by a car? Will I avoid this car? I need to do something. So Violet bought some sodas on Easter, and she went to confront the perpetrators. Can you imagine that? She walked in, and everyone was shocked. And then she saw that they were very scared, and she started making jokes on other things, talk about community problems and other things. And when they were relaxed, she came back to the purpose of the visit. And she said, I remember you, and you, and you, and you, and you. You worked in our family, we were in the house, and you killed 30 members of my family. I see I live with you every day. But you know what? I decided to forgive you. So let's drink this soda on this Easter, and I hope one day you are going to visit me. And she spoke about the program, and she invited them to join the sessions in the program. Today, Violet and Alexandra are actually one of the ambassadors moving around communities to talk about peace and the reconciliation and the healing. So how did we do it? And we are so glad that the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs understood to address root cause of conflict in Burundi, we need to touch certain key factors. So we asked young people who were the main target of the program, what do you want now? And the answer was like, we need to improve our economic resilience. We need to be able to have a better future for our children and our families. And that was it. So we brought them from a mixed group of ethnic groups. And you know Hutu Tutsi in Burundi, for those who are, understand the situation. also some young people from different political parties and religious background. We brought them together through income-generating activities, and that became actually a common interest for them. And then through the years, we worked on narrative theater, where we start talking about the past. As I lived in South Africa, at least I say to my staff, South Africa people talk about their issues, but in Burundi we keep it inside until something happens and we resort to actually killing each other. So I think a society that is ready to confront their past is ready to heal or to reconcile. So we did that through narrative theater. We had to mobilize communities to really look at good governance. And here we had really some social contract that were developed between young people, the community, and the local leaders. For example, in one of the communities, we saw for the first time in the history of the country, the administrator had to publish the commune budget. We had to really navigate between informal and formal justice. In the case of Violet, she had a choice to go through the court. But however, in the court system where, as I said, the perpetrators are very, very powerful, like in Burundi, there's a say that a brochette or a kebab with a beer can gain you a court case. So in this case, as a poor young girl, she could have gone through this formal justice and she get exhausted and she lose more resources. She resorted to go through the dialogue and mediation. Yes. Okay, then we had the intergenerational dialogues, which are very good for Burundi. As I said, this conflict needs to stop because they are passed on from children to children. Now, it does not sound like everything is rosy. We had a really bumpy road. However, throughout the program, 84% of the participants, they really reported that the peace is prevailing in their communities. Also, 86% said they feel safe at night. Remember, this program came after 2015 elections, where we had a lot of grenades being thrown in people's houses. We had people kidnapped, and you find the dead bodies in the river or in the street. It was really chaotic after 2015, but the program had to sensitize the community, and the people started feeling safe to sleep even in their house because they were sleeping in the street or somewhere in the bush because they scared their neighbors could do something to them. Let me finish with this story, which is very close to my heart. During the 2020 elections, I'm in a community in Kayogoro, somewhere close to Tanzania. Everyone knew that the young people are going to slaughter themselves. It was clear that it's going to be a butchery. This is what we hear, and we saw it. But as we worked with them for 5 years, we were shocked that in that community, there was no even a single violence that was connected to elections. These young people, what they did, they removed their badge, the political badges and the uniforms, and they said, our economic interests are bigger than our political ambitions or our political interests. And also, the administrator said to me, thank you so much. These young people that I was very scared of, they are the ones that are being my counselor, and they are really working to develop their communities. So thank you so much. As I said earlier, this was sponsored by the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and also was implemented by the 4 different organizations, like International Organization, Help a Child, American Free Service Committee, CODE, and the Maintainment Mubisi, and other 9 local organizations. Thank you so much. And please, just to finish, so valid story is on this card we will give you, and there are also other more stories. Please visit our booth. It's very beautiful with the Burundian colors. You can read more stories. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You know, we've all read so much about the violence in Burundi and unrest surrounding the elections. But what you didn't read about was this amazing program, and I hope that after the publicity you've gotten here and all of the work that you've put into it, that the next time we read about Burundi, it will be about your program and about the youth in Burundi. Let me bring you to a second program, and this program is from the Philippines. It is called the Initiative for Dialogue and Empowerment through Alternative Legal Services, Inc. That is a mouthful. So they got smart and they just called it IDEALS. So that's how you can think of it, as ideals. We have two people here from the Philippines to talk about the program, Jonah Murata and Mac Hale Bunigan. Now, this particular project was really spawned in part by the quarantine, because what happened in the Philippines during the quarantine is that there were significant rights abuses, and it allowed the government to move in and exploit its power and growing authoritarianism. It's a theme that we've heard not just from the Philippines, but from other countries across the world during the pandemic. What's interesting here is that this program that was put together was done by new lawyers who had just passed the bar. So we don't have old hands trying to figure out a new program. We have brand new lawyers seeing a crisis, seeing a need, stepping into the breach, and creating this program. So the idea is that given the pandemic situation and the quarantine, that there was a lot of stress on access to justice, and this was particularly true in marginalized communities. So they created what was called the Legal Advice Platform, and they nicknamed it Cia Justicia, and justicia is a word for justice. What the Legal Advice Platform does is basically give marginalized people, particularly women, victims of human rights violations, informal workers, and others, it gives them access to legal advice. So it was designed by lawyers, by women lawyers, in fact, and coincidentally, 80% of the users on this program are women. They created how-to guides, they had group meetings online, and they had Facebook groups. And they say they were the first human rights chat box in the country. And if you went to them on Facebook, they have 4.7 stars on Facebook. But more impressively, they have answered more than 25,000 questions of citizens of the Philippines who needed to know their rights. So I welcome the program Ideals.
So, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Jonah from the Philippines, and now with me is...
I'm Mac Hale Bunigan, as mentioned.
we are Filipino lawyers from Ideals. I won't mention the long name anymore. And we are the current project coordinators of the Tisha Justicia initiative.
As we all know, the global pandemic has been hard for all of countries, especially in the Philippines, which had imposed the longest, if not one of the longest lockdown in the world. In 2020, more than 4,000 were arrested just because they violated the curfew currently running at that time. And to our surprise, there was a shoot-to-kill order from our president for anyone who would violate the quarantine protocol. Well, considering that we already have a COVID-19 virus, lives were lost not just because of the virus, but also because of the government policies. Now, here are some news article that was bombarded during that time. So it wasn't really a good place to be, the Philippines. But to better situate ourselves, let us look at the life of Maria. Back then, she was a single mother living in a rented apartment in Manila, and she's a single mother of 2 minor daughters and living with her brother. She was a food server, and of course, as a restaurant in a lockdown area, they had to stop operation. That's why Maria lost her job. She was part of the 4.2 million Filipinos who lost their job during the pandemic. And her job was her only means of providing for the family. Without it, she wasn't able to pay the bills and even the loans that are coming due. With all of that, an unfortunate news was sent to her. Her brother, living with her, was arrested because he was in public without wearing the mandatory face mask, which he was wearing before, but because he wanted to drink water, he had to take off the mask. Just think about it, the arbitrariness of our police then. And Maria was thinking about this news. Shoot them dead. He was worried for her brother, of course. And she wanted to consult a lawyer, but she cannot afford the legal consultation fee of around 20 to 30 US dollars. Again, she lost her job and she has bills to pay and she cannot afford the services of a lawyer. Therefore, she found herself to be part of the 80% of Filipinos who have no access to justice because they don't have the money to talk to a lawyer. This is a fact that the COVID-19 pandemic actually further aggravated.
Yeah, that's true. Thus, in June 2020, IDEALS launched Tisha's Tisha, or Tisha for Justice. We launched this initially to fight the unlawful arrests and unlawful detention, which was the government response for the pandemic. So you're gonna ask us, why on Facebook, right? Facebook is the most accessible legal platform in the Philippines. We have over 86.6 million users of Facebook, and they have a free access feature. So even if you don't have internet access, you can message us as long as you install the Facebook and the Messenger apps. We don't have any formal partnerships to them, by the way. So yeah. And next slide. So there are two ways, actually, which we render legal services. First is that we give direct legal advice, as mentioned, and second is that we have legal rights education. So how do we do this? The second one, we upload online publication materials about legal rights and education about 2 to 3 times per week in the local vernacular, and they're like videos and photos, very easily digestible for our clients.
Yeah, and going back to Marie, oh yeah, no.
Sorry, there's another slide. So yeah, so Miss Sal Torres, one of her clients, she mentioned in one of the focus group discussions that initially she didn't message Tisha, but she liked and followed the page because actually her daughter was abused. So she said that she was able to understand how the hearings work, how the lawyerly legal jargons are, because she followed Tisha's Tisha.
And now let's go back to Maria. She was on Facebook when she saw the Facebook ad of Tisha Who's Tisha that read, "Free legal advice, just send us a message." So that she did. And she was presented with 3 options, which are frequently asked questions, magtanong sa abogado, which is as a lawyer, and government hotline number. Of course, she quickly clicked on the as a lawyer, and she was able to talk to a certain attorney, Jonah, who explained to her in Filipino very clearly and in a very digestible way the law that was concerning her brother. She was encouraged then, empowered by the legal knowledge that she was able to obtain, to go to her brother and expedite the process of freeing him from jail without the physical assistance of a lawyer.
Yeah. And before we forget, for example, Maria has no smartphone. We also have a text line. We have 2 local numbers which they could text, and we also render legal advice there via text.
There's a happy ending for Maria because her brother was freed, but again, her problems were not yet over. She has other problems. So she decided to like and follow the Tisha Who's Tisha Facebook page and discovered that there were 3 Facebook groups that Tisha Who's Tisha was managing. These were about women's rights, about labor rights, and civil and political rights. Of course, she joined the women's rights, and there she was able to participate in Facebook Lives conducted by our lawyers. But what she really liked about it is that she felt that she was not alone. her fellow members were also experiencing domestic abuse, and their exchange about their experiences has made them realize that they could do something about it. Aside from that, considering that she still have other problems, with Tisha Justicia, she was able to actually demand support from the father of her minor daughters and ask for separation pay from the restaurant that had her severed from her employment.
Yeah, so aside from what we do in Tisha Justicia, Ideals saw that there really is a gap in access to justice. So we are currently handling a few cases actually in quasi-judicial bodies as well as in courts. So currently you have 30 cases referred originally from Tisha Justicia to the litigation team, which we are also part of. We are handling mostly sexual abuse cases, labor cases, and war on drugs cases. So as of now, we have more than 29,000 clients and more than 49,000 remote sessions, and over 35,000 Facebook likes, and 5,000 group members. And we are continuing to expand. So given all of this, Tisha Justicia is a clearly sustainable and multifaceted access to justice platform. So sustainable, why? We only need a laptop and an internet connection to be operated. So we actually attract lawyer volunteers, as young as we are also, to answer the questions. As to replicability, we have already partnered with law schools and so that they too could launch their own Tisha Justicia platforms. So yeah, let's go to the next one. So we would like to end our presentation with this last slide. No, we would like to show this because comments like this makes us really energized to fight for their rights for another day. So imagine if we could launch a platform similar to Tisha Justicia in all parts of the globe. Imagine how many lives will be changed, how many women and children will be saved from abuse, and how many laborers or workers will be able to enjoy their hard-earned money. Imagine if we could make access to justice reachable to everyone, one client at a time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to the Philippines. I don't think many young lawyers could say they had 29,000 clients within a few weeks of graduating from law school, so that is quite a feat. The other thing that we ask of the projects is, what is their downstream consequence? Is it more than a one-time project? Can it be replicated in other parts of the country, or as they say, the world? And for each of the projects that we have here today, they've been able to answer that question, and we'll be able to explore that with them a little bit more. Our next project is from Mexico. It's called Poder Judicial del Estado de Hidalgo, which is the judicial power in the state of Hidalgo. And this project has focused primarily on mediation among indigenous people. It's explained in the project that there is already a construct within indigenous people in terms of a social construct, but there are a lot of issues that have arisen in terms of social, legal, and political issues. So this project, which was started some time ago, but then really ramped up more recently, has been able to address unemployment, marginalization, migration, violence, and discrimination. I might also say that they do this by integrating local customs and also local and indigenous languages, because in Mexico, as in many places, there, of course, is a primary language, but there are many, many indigenous languages and indigenous groups as well. So here you have tradition and customary law. I was quite impressed that they have had an 85% success rate in bringing their issues and mediations to a close and coming to a resolution. So that is an incredibly successful rate. They've also been able to establish the State Center for Alternative Justice. And now we have a project which was started, I would say, outside the courts, but is now inside the courts. And there's this ability to have a compatibility between a project like this and the court system. So with that, I'll turn it over to our project from Mexico. And I should say Hidalgo, I've been there. I realized it's north of Mexico City. It's a very beautiful place. And now you'll hear from Hidalgo.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. For us, it's really an honor and a blessing to be here. This project has 14 years ago started, and now it's like a reality to be here. And I'm here with my dear friend, Nancy Gutierrez, we started 14 years ago, these beautiful and indigenous people trying to find a better conditions. You know, when you are part of a third world country, it's really hard. It's really hard to go sometimes in your car and you see a little boy trying to clean your window. It's hard. Justice, you know, in Mexico we have sometimes the richer people in the world, and we have the poor people too. And it's very hard. Justice is just when you walk and you see all these people with this difference, you feel really bad about it. I'm telling you, that's very hard. When I got my degree from the university, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to have something that really be a bridge between our people and to bring access to justice to that. That's why I started in the State Court of Hidalgo 14 years ago. Now she's our president of the State Court, Janet Herrera, that she's present. And I explained that program to them. And I said, we have to be a bridge here. So, you know, the people, the indigenous people, and I know the people that we come from a third world country, you will really understand me. Sometimes they say about the laws, all these things that we have, human rights, but it's not possible. It's not possible because when you go to that community, the people even don't have money to go to one community to another. They will not have money to go to court. They don't have money to have an attorney. But you don't have to see, okay, they can't do that. We have to be there and have that access to them. That's why by the court, we hire people from the community. These people know their traditions. These people know the native language, and these people are respected, because for the community it's really important that the people that be there be respected for them. They are really, this is very important. And these people were hired by the court. When you came to a country like this, or you go to United States or another places, you see how the people are living, and that's a hopeful thing for us. Like, we can live like a human beings to have the same rights, and that's what we are looking for. And this have 14 years ago, all these things. All the pictures you are going to see are real. They are from the program. That's Diego and our mediators that were, but I will tell you, okay, where is Pachuca and where is Hidalgo? Hidalgo is here in the center of Mexico, an hour away from Mexico City, and we have 3 different indigenous regions. And many of these people, having 50%, they know the language, of course, in the native language. And how do we find this indigenous mediator? We have these stages. In the first time we went for the community, we asked them for permission. Can we go there, make them conferences? And they translated to them, because we have different languages, Nahuatl, Tepehua, and Ñañú. So we were having some conference there, and after the conferences, they were coming and they said, I want to be a mediator. I really want to help my people. They have like a lot of violence. They didn't know how to resolve their problems with not violence, like our Burundi friends tell us. Then we have a registration. Then we did this psychometric test. Why the psychometric test? We really want the people who have the skills. What kind of skills? To be a good listener, to be impartial, and to be very patient. So we really need that mediator from that community. And then we start training the mediators from the court that were public mediators in the city. We trained them, and then afterwards we made a final evaluation about like kind of doing a mediation day with actors and how they do it. Okay, this is a real model of social transformation. Why? I will highlight some very important one. For example, women. In the beginning of the program, the women didn't ask for a mediation. They were like afraid. You know what happened with mediation? Mediation gives you a voice. The people that doesn't have voice, the people that need her rights, that to hear what they want in their lives, this was for women. You are a mediator and you ask a woman, what do you need? What do you want to happen in your life? And they were like, I'm really allowed to answer that? You are allowed. You have that right. So after 2 years, in the beginning, only men asked for mediation, maybe some conflicts in the neighborhood. And then we have the women 2 years later asking for child support. I don't like how my husband or whatever meaningful one is treating me. So it was like a huge change in 2 years. Now that 60 or 70% of the people that ask for a mediation are women. Look, all these women and powerful women doing in these communities. So all these are real. That's the problem about the transportation, because sometimes it's really hard to go to one community to another. And I'm telling you, that people, indigenous people, doesn't have to go to the centers of ADA dispute resolutions. The mediator that is hired by the court is going to the communities. He's going there, and he stays sometimes for 1 week, sleeping there, and he's held. One time I went with one of them, many times, but one time, and you know, when Diego is the name of one mediator, when Diego went in that community, all the people start coming. Like Diego was like a rock star. I'm like, whoa, Diego, what happened? And everybody like, Diego, I need that because I want to resolve that problem in their language. But many people came. It was amazing how the people really like this part, these restorative effects. So, okay, thank you. My time is the problem. Okay, 85% of the people who participate in mediation reach an agreement. And the agreement have the same value as judicial determination, the same value. Even they have in the different language, they write in a different language, and they are signed in their language. And sometimes you don't have to have a written agreement, because you know what they said? My word is value. I don't need to sign anything. My word is value. And sometimes when you go to the city, it's like, sometimes our word is not valuable. But I really learned so much for the indigenous communities. I'm really learning about them. 97% of the people recommend indigenous mediation. This is not a new project. In the beginning, it was very hard for us, like to talk to congressmen and that kind of stuff, because they said, we don't have numbers. Now we have numbers, 14 years ago. So 97% recommend. How do we know they are recommended? We made a survey after a mediation to see if they feel impartial, if they feel some comments, what they wanted to say to us, how to improve all of this. And look, some comments. I want to highlight some comments. Some are, I feel my worth in here. So many women said, you give me voice. I didn't have one. I feel such peace. It's good that they listen to us and they understand what we say. I don't feel shame anymore. Thank you very much. I felt listened as I have never felt in my life. And I can say what I had here inside. Thank you, because I was finally able to get my children together. And we have been able to talk respectfully like we had never done before. A lot of crime prevention. The conflict is dynamic. The conflict doesn't stop. So you really have to prevent, to grow. So I just want to tell you some Nahuatl word that says something to you with my people. It's a tascamate mia. It meaning thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Our thanks to Ms. Sepulveda and Ms. Gutierrez for their presentation. I should also recognize that the Chief Magistrada de Hidalgo in the Court of Appeals is here, so we welcome you as well. One thing that we noticed from this project and some others is the word data, and that is music to the ears of the World Justice Project. Because, as they said, it was very hard to get going at the beginning, apart from all the other structural barriers that one might have. There was no data to suggest that this would be a successful program or it would be a program that should be carried on. So I think that combination of data plus the enthusiasm that you saw, plus bringing in the indigenous community has made this a very, very successful project. So our next project comes to us from Ghana, and I have, from Ghana, we will have Jonathan Osai Osuwu, who will be with us. And the project is called Justice for All Program. It is sponsored out of something called the POS Foundation. And if you were in Ghana, and I said POS Foundation, you would know exactly what that was. But I'm curious, so I said, well, what does that mean, POS? I'm always wanting to get to the bottom of things. Well, it means Perfecto de Sentimiento, perfection of sentiments. But nobody says those words, they just say POS, and because of their success in Ghana, it's become a magic word. Interestingly, this has been a project that's been generated by those who are under 40 years old, another theme that we're seeing here in terms of who's doing the projects. We have, of course, the founder of POS who's here with us, but POS actually runs this project as well. So what is the project? Well, basically, one of the key issues that they have identified in Ghana is that there's a difficult process in terms of inaccessibility to fair trials. There's inadequate legal education and representation. But on a more granular level, the police have failed to bring subjects to court within a reasonable amount of time. And sometimes, instead of bringing them to court for a presentation, the police take arrested individuals directly to jail. And it also means that there can be this long pretrial and presentment process, also overcrowding in the jails. And it means that many people are not even brought for what we would consider pretrial proceedings in any kind of fair, deliberate, or speedy manner. So the solution to this, they found through Justice for All program, is to have a mobile, in-person court. And instead of waiting for arrested individuals to go to a court, the court comes to the people in terms of where they're housed, whether it's a prison or something else. So it really became a very unique partnership between the POS Foundation and the Judicial Service. Then COVID came, and like for everybody, services changed, access to courts shrunk or was completely cut off. So what they did is they began doing virtual hearings and virtual sessions in order to overcome COVID. So despite the fact that they already had the complication of how long people were being held in pretrial detention, now they could make some inroads by having a mobile program in the court itself. So they've measured their success, I think, by stories, of course, but they've also measured their success in data in terms of the remand prison population. So there have been some very important and aggressive changes, really all of this coming about largely due to the quarantine and the pandemic. So let me now welcome the Justice for All program from Ghana.
December 15, 2017, was a special day for 66 remand prisoners, many of whom had spent years behind bars in Koforidua in Ghana's eastern region. On that day, a special court at long length processed their cases and most of them were released. But returning to his village, 72-year-old Kojo Obeng found that he had lost virtually everything he ever owned. The frail old man now has to sleep on the floor in his brother's house. Kojo Obeng is trying to cope with his new life as a free man. Even though he was never convicted and had to spend a grueling 8 years and 5 months in prison, he was not compensated.
About 98% of the people we're dealing with in prison are poor people. They are people who do not have the financial muscle to hire the services of a lawyer. So Justice for All gets in and makes sure that if you have not been heard, an immobile prison special court will listen to your case, review your case, and then, if possible, free you to go back to society.
The Justice for All program has helped reduce the share of prisoners on remand from about 33% of Ghana's total prison population to around 12%.
The POS Foundation, whose highly professional work I have witnessed during my visits to Nsawam and Nakuru prisons. The Justice for All program is a major hallmark in Ghana's justice system, and as we heard, other African countries are studying the program with a view to implementing similar programs.
Even though the activities of paralegals are not regulated or formalized in Ghana, it is only right that we give due recognition to the invaluable role played by these facilitators from the POS Foundation. They have functioned as de facto paralegals towards the sustenance and growth of the program. They interview the prison inmates and facilitate the drafting of their applications and criminal appeals. Once again, I would be very pleased to acknowledge the POS Foundation.
It is made up of the Judicial Service, the Office of the Attorney General, the Ghana Police, the Ghana Prisons, Legal Aid, and the POS Foundation, led by Jonathan Osewusu, for its efforts to resolve the dilemma between crime control and due process, and for the effective collaboration between civil society and government.
Facilitator of the Justice for All program, the tireless, indefatigable, irrepressible Mr. Jonathan.
Justice for All program is a model that can be replicated in the region, something that's really had an impact and an immediate and obvious impact.
The case was tracked out in 2016, so apparently he was discharged. But then with the same warrant from the court that discharged him, you and your outfit managed to send him to prison where he has remained till date.
Only I've not knowledge about this matter now.
Well, by court. The case against the accused person was passed on 15 December 2016 by the District Court Mampo. However, the accused person has remained in prison since that date. In the circumstances, the accused is unconditionally discharged.
All right.
Just for pennies of phones, so almost I'm going to be scared. Never be tough only, and I mean, yeah, be tough, and I mean, yeah, be tough. That will be us.
Thank you very much. I think the video explains itself. We've been doing this for the past somehow years, I think for some time now. And for the virtual court, I must say that we go set up the in-prison court in the various prisons. We adjudicate the cases, and if 3 courts are sitting in the prisons for a day, over 70 cases, you end up getting about half of them going home on bail or discharge. But I must correct something, that we have been able to reduce the prison remand population from 33% in 2007 to 9.7 as at the time we were coming for this program. That is a remarkable or a big reduction in terms of numbers. If you look at those who were discharged, those who were granted bail, those who were convicted, these are the statistics that you show. So we are able to now decongest the prisons together with our partnership with the Judicial Service of the Republic of Ghana. Kenya, as we all know, is an African country. They came to Ghana to understudy the Justice for All program, and they are replicating something called All for Justice in their country, also to decongest the prisons. And other African experts suggest that this can be a model to decongest Africa's overcrowded prisons. And I think beyond Africa, we all have similar problems, and we can use a model of this nature to decongest our prisons by introducing justice for all to our system. The reason why we are talking about Africa is that in Nigeria, the remand, that is pre-trial, when we say remand, we are talking about people who have not stand trial and have been sent to prison. So we have 72% of the total prison population in Nigeria, 72 to be remandees, those on pre-trial. And when you come to Liberia, 67. When you come to Kenya, 42. So it is something that we think we should consider looking at decongesting prisons in Africa. One thing that we did that we must also say is that we also donated PPE to all the prisons from the southern part to the northern part of Ghana. And we are proud to say that Ghana has recorded no COVID-19 case in any of our prisons, something that the world is celebrating together with us as a result of the professionalism the prisons have brought to bear and donations such as this. But unfortunately, we got back after the donation. Myself and my young able team all got down with COVID at the high tension of the process. And so we were not considered as frontliners, but we had COVID. In my quarantine session, and then I came up with this quote that the most affected and yet marginalized group of people in the midst of a pandemic, such as COVID, are orphans, prisoners, and people living with disability. So they need help. That is as a result of my quarantine with my team when we finished the donation and got COVID. As a result of that, we have also tried to look at policy and legislative loopholes that needs to be blocked. We can't just go and get them from prison and another day they take them back to prison. So we have successfully come up with Narcotics Control Commission Act, which we were part of the advocate that got this law. So that if you use drug, you'll be seen as a public health and human right issue and not criminal. So we have the bill passed. We've also been able to get the community service bill, which is not in our Criminal Offences Act. We have it as a bill before the Ministry of Interior. We also have what we call in-prison paralegal program. It's a program where we deal with convicts who want to appeal on their cases on self-representation when they don't have funds. So that is where we have been able to successfully gotten a 69-year-old woman acquitted and discharged after spending 4 years, 7 months in custody. So on behalf of my team, I would want to say that this is what we want to say to policymakers, that is African problems are best solved when we apply African solutions that have been tested, proven, and meet international best practices. As I end, may I take the opportunity to showcase my team who came all the way from Ghana together with me.
Thank you to Mr. Osu and also to the team who came all the way from Ghana to support this amazing project. This project highlighted a situation that we find around the world, and that is prison overcrowding. We also find the inability of officials to move detainees efficiently through the system. Some people are held longer in detention than their actual sentence would be, and of course that's not only a tragedy for the individual, but it's a violation of human rights. Important about this program, apart from the human stories, is they have also documented success. So again, we're back to data, which is really important. And they've also done what we hope projects will do, and that's be able to replicate it. And as he spoke about the possibility of replicating this in other countries in Africa. So what starts as a small project in one country and then grows and has amazing support, you saw there from the government and the officials, really can be a beacon and a catalyst for other countries. So I think these kind of projects, as we walk around, think of them, what will they look like when they're replicated? What will it look like if we could fill an entire auditorium with project after project? So now on to our next project. This project is called Outland Denim, and the project director is Richard Mark Williams. It's a project that really looks at modern slavery, and here the issue is a supply chain issue. It's a very different kind of project from some of those you've already seen. Mr. Williams has been in the military, he's been in the financial services sector, and has a great deal of experience. And what he was seeing, of course, is that various Australian companies where he lives, such as Outland Denim, were having great impact in other countries where they were sourcing their materials. In this case, the cotton that was going into the denim was coming from Turkey. And there were considerable issues there in terms of working conditions, in terms of pay, and particularly, again, exacerbated with COVID. And there was a certain complexity and opaqueness to the entire operation. So what his organization did is come in and they began to deal with what is this largest migrant community, many of whom speak Arabic, and providing them education, hotlines, access to legal rights, also reporting as to what's happening, and giving and making remediation programs for this supply chain. So this is not an unusual supply chain. We have the cotton growers in Turkey. They're supplying to worldwide manufacturers, several of them in Australia, and I think later on we'll be also selling to Levi Strauss and others. And these supply chain issues have become increasingly important because they represent marginalized populations, often represent refugees or migrants that live in a particular country. And they are some of the most vulnerable because of language issues, and also they don't really have a community that can represent them. I'll just say one last thing before I invite Mr. Williams to the stage, and that was a question. I was thinking about denim and blue jeans and the origin of that, and I've heard a lot of stories. So, in fact, this product that we think of as denim had originally come from Italy, and then it got a name of bleu denim, as in Nîmes, France, and then some people turned that into blue jeans, bleu denim, blue jeans, and then we had Levi's, and now half the world is wearing denim pants, and we'll now learn how we can make inroads into those communities that source the material for our blue jeans.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Richard Williams, and I'm here representing a number of organisations today to talk to you about Sarceline. And the Sarceline Program is an enduring program. It's commercially funded, that operates in Turkey, and it's really been designed to do two things. Firstly, it's been designed to provide the most vulnerable workers in fashion supply chains education, awareness, and a voice. And it's also been designed to provide transparency around the exploitative labour practices that occur in these supply chains, to illuminate these issues, to create a sense of urgency for action and to initiate change. Before I get into the program, I must say that I'm actually quite humbled to be on the stage alongside the other finalists and say congratulations on all your work. It's truly inspiring. And I'm honoured to be here today with you actually to share a little bit about the work that we're doing. So where it all began, it began with Outland Denim. It's a brand, it's a fashion brand, headquartered in Australia but works extensively throughout Southeast Asia and across the world. It was set up originally to provide employment and opportunity for women who were victims of exploitation and trafficking. And that brand has a vision to make fashion a force for good, to make the world better because an item of clothing was made, not just minimise the impact it causes. But to realise this vision, we needed to be able to engage with, understand and address some of the issues facing vulnerable workers throughout their entire supply chains. So the problem itself really begins a little bit more broadly than what you see on the screen there, and it begins with the fashion industry, which I think is arguably one of the most toxic in the world when we consider the environmental and social impact it causes. There's mass use of forced and exploitative labour practices at all levels, but these become far more pronounced as you move into the supply chain, where there's a complete lack of transparency. But this is a really hard problem to think about, and one that most of us would probably prefer to ignore, because it's pretty confronting to think that the clothes that we all wear and we all enjoy are potentially made by exploiting the vulnerability and desperation of some of the most vulnerable people on the planet. And so to begin to initiate change, we really needed to be able to engage with these workers. We need to capture their stories and to bring the issues to life. But this isn't as simple as it sounds, just engaging with the workers. There's massive problems in doing this. Firstly, the size of supply chains means that trying to engage workers through known supply lines is very time and resource intensive and often prohibitive. Secondly, there's lots of unknowns in supply chains. We don't know where all the suppliers are, and as we move into them, we start to encounter sort of informal and unregulated labour markets. And then there's the nature of the workforce itself, which is temporary and often doesn't work in the same place 2 days in a row. And finally, there's a lot of organisational and cultural blocks that mean engaging with workers through suppliers themselves is often not ideal, and there's also a reluctance for workers to voice their own concerns. So at this point, we're working through the problem. We know that we want to proactively find these issues so that we can fix them, and we've determined that the best way to do this is to engage directly with the workers, but we've got all these challenges. We've got the scale, complexities, we've got the unknowns, we've got the nature of the workforce to deal with, and we've got these internal blocks. And it was at this point that we realised actually the only way to do this and the best way to do this is to actually engage with these workers at an ecosystem level, rather than trying to engage with them directly through known supply lines and suppliers. Now this, for everyone sitting here today and online, this probably seems like a pretty simple and straightforward solution, but I must say it's a bit of a fundamental mindset shift for brands and suppliers who are typically only interested in what they know can be directly connected to them. So we set up this program to engage and build trust directly with the most vulnerable worker communities outside of the supplier environments. And this program is centred around two core functions. Firstly, it's designed to push outbound communications to these workers containing education and awareness content. Education content that informs them about their rights, firstly as a human, but then as a worker. Then increasing their awareness around the risks and indicators of exploitation. And then the second function really leverages the first, and we use the outbound communications to initiate inbound communications, giving the workers then the opportunity to report in issues that they face of exploitative labour practices into a reporting mechanism that's easily accessible and that we set up in country. So how does this actually work? Well, in the first instance, we start by mapping vulnerable worker demographics. And the top left you see on the screen there, what we're looking at in this case is displaced Syrians and cotton workers in Turkey. Secondly, top right, we then overlay or look at the sectors of interest, and in this case it was the cotton. We then move to the bottom left, and then we basically start to push the outbound communications to target audiences where these two overlay or intersect, and that is the catalyst for inbound reporting, which is indicated by the black dots and lines and poorly formatted words there. I apologise for that. And then finally, the final step at the bottom right is we overlay known supplier locations with these issued hotspots. It allows us to identify the suppliers and the brands that are affected. We then report those issues to them, support them with further investigation and remediation as required. So how's the program performed? Well, from a numbers perspective, it's been pretty effective. We've got a broad reach with our outbound communications. We've had now, those numbers are a little bit old, but we've had over 500,000 people actively engage with the education and awareness content, which has a great preventative aspect to it. And we've had over 600 worker reports of exploitative labour practices come in that have allowed us to identify the key issues from a remediation. On the top right there, you see the sorts of comments that come in from the workers day in and day out. But the numbers only tell part of the story. And so here's a few practical examples of what's been achieved. Firstly, at a very granular level. On the left-hand side there, it's informed the distribution of safety equipment, getting the right equipment to the right people at the right time. In the middle there, the human stories that have been captured by this program and presented to stakeholders have fundamentally changed the way certain suppliers see the problem on the ground, to the extent now that they've implemented some of their own social programs at the farm level. And then finally, the evidence and trend data collected has allowed us to start to influence systemic change, increasing transparency around wage payment processes in response to issues that were reported by workers. So to wrap up on that slide, the program has really allowed us to engage with workers throughout the entire supply chain at scale. It's allowed us to educate them of their rights and then identify where these rights aren't being met so that we can act. The program has proven to be effective at generating buy-in and as a catalyst for change, and we're now looking to grow the program into other regions, other industries, and to service other brands. Finally, I'd just like to acknowledge and thank all the organisations that have been part of this program to date. Outland Denim and Nudie Jeans are two fantastic fashion brands that are certainly thought leaders in their industry. Bossa, a local supplier in Turkey that is leading the charge on the ground. IN2, a world-class strategic communications provider that really is the backbone for this program. And PSG, which is an intelligence services firm that designed, orchestrates and runs the program on a day-to-day basis. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I think this is a really great example of a different kind of a program that really, again, it's grassroots, but the reality is that it rebounds to the corporate situation so that there is more transparency in these situations. What I'd like now is all of the presenters to come up, and we'll have a few moments of dialogue, and maybe we'll have some questions from the audience as well. Yep, no, you can be in whatever order you wish. So one of the things that is always interesting in these projects is a question of what have you learned? We have people out here who are in other projects and others who may be starting projects. But in very quick terms, what advice would you give somebody to start a project as successful as the ones you've had? Shall we start with you? Start with the Philippines.
Why did I sit here? Anyway, yes, I think maybe what we've learned when we were implementing our project is that technology can be used for good, and we just have to think outside of the box. Even the smallest idea can affect a large number of the population, as we have experienced.
For me will be do it, do action. We start to have like so many things in your mind, like it's not going to be possible, maybe for us, maybe indigenous people will not accept the program, and you don't do anything because you just haven't here your jail. You know, it doesn't work like that. But do it. Do in action. The first conference that we got with indigenous people and they were translating, many people came. We need that. Thank you very much. The court is here with us. They were like so pleased, and that was my first barrier. I don't know if that's a good translation, but it was my first thing that I thought it was going to be the obstacle, but it wasn't at all. So if you have a mindset, if you have something, it's there for some reason. You have a purpose here, so do it. Put it in action.
I would say you need to start with a question. Ask the community, what do they want to see? Like we did in Burundi, we asked the youth, so what do you want now? And then they told us what they want the future to look like. And then build that with them and ensure that you track them through the trajectory until they reach that the future. So a question can bring a very good answer if you work with the community.
Thank you. And I think it's really just extending on what's already been said. For me, it would be actually identifying the problem you're trying to solve and thinking about exactly what are you trying to achieve here, and not fall into the trap of just trying to improve potentially imperfect systems that have been going for a long time. But think about the problem and then become creative with your solutions.
Building on what my brother has just said, you should also build on the assets. Often we also tend to look at the problems alone. And then when you look at the problems alone, make sure it doesn't overwhelm you, but identify the assets within the community so that you'll be able to use those assets within that community to solve the problems within. If you concentrate too much on the problems, which is critical to identify, as he said, then you will be swallowed by the problem. So as you identify the problem, concentrate also on the assets, individual potentials, capacity within the community to be able to change or bring about the change. Thank you.
So when we talked about downstream strategies for your projects, and all of you have brought them to a certain point now. How do you take the project to the next level? And I'm sure you've thought about it, but now I want to know about it. So.
All right. For us in Ideals, the next step will be actually to expand our reach, because at the moment, majority of our reach is within Luzon. But the Philippines has 2 more islands, Mindanao and Visayas, and the Philippines has more than 150 languages, and as some of the project here is, it's best to talk to them in their natural language, in their local language, because their language carries their values, their culture, and their history, and it would best fit as one of our project here is African solution for African problems. That would apply also in our project, local solutions for local problems.
Thank you.
For us, will be like the people see this like a model of social transformation, and we want to, in any country that have indigenous people, to reply it. We really want to see, for example, in Mexico, There are so many places that have indigenous people in other states, and I tell them, please start this. And they want to start it sometimes like a mediator, like a public mediator, to go to the communities. That doesn't work like that, because you need a translator, and the people doesn't respect the people that go into the court. So we really want this to have this model of social transformation, and you can reply it in every country. I think we are all humans. We look different sometimes, but we are the same. So it really helps in everywhere we are.
Good. Talking about the question again, along the program, we had to actually be adaptive, and through our learning agenda, we used to really question if the program is very effective. So our strategy was to really adapt. Two very critical situations for us. It was COVID, as the other people presented, but also during the process in Burundi, there was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that has been set by the government through funding from EU. However, the funding was cut due to so many other problems that I don't want to talk about here. And then the TRC Commission found itself in a very big problem, and they couldn't meet their mandate. And at that time, we were actually trying to connect to the transitional justice, ensure that our communities can really access the TRC committees. So since the whole mandate changed, we had really to sit down and ask a question: is it really proper to continue the route of the TRC? And then we readapt the program. And we had a very good funder, the Dutch Minister of Foreign Affairs, who was really easier to, who was pushing for adaptive programming and allow us to change some of the budget line to ensure that we meet the demand of the people. And then that's when we went back to looking at community-led dialogue and the community-based advocacy for transitional justice. And also during COVID, again, at the same time, we realized that since the country was locked down, we had to send some psychosocial assistant to do one-on-one with these people. Remember, I spoke about trauma healing is a big component of the program. So they had to go and do one-on-one in the house to meet people and to talk about the issues. Because as people were still traumatized by the past, again with COVID. So, and that's how people became to open up, like Violet and other people, to continue to heal and transform and also reconcile as a society and as individual people.
Thank you. And well, I think it's just continuing on the same theme, but for us it's growth, of course. We want to extend the impact we're achieving. For us, we really see this program as a way to force change. The trick for us, though, is to convince the brands and suppliers that they want to change along the way and drag them with us. But then also listening to everyone talk today, I can see so many wonderful aspects of all of these programs that I'd love to see integrated into the program that we're running as well. So that's part of our evolution, is to continue to look at who are, other great products, other great solutions that are out there, and how can we learn and incorporate those aspects as well.
Since we are looking at expansion, specifically to that of Africa, we all had our laws imported from somewhere. So the problems of Africa seems to be the same in each member country. So we are asking the AU, to consider the Justice for All as a model to decongest Africa's prisons, but not to just expand. Ghana's laws, culture are different from Nigeria. So if you want to expand into these countries, we need to contextualize the idea to suit their laws and their system to be able to get the relevance. It is not every practice that is termed to be best practice that can be good in your jurisdiction. So in expanding, we want to understand the laws, the regulations, the people they are living, and the culture to be able to contextualize what nice idea into their system to bring about the needed impact that is needed for development and growth and justice and fairness for all. Thank you.
So I'd like to have a lot more questions for you all, but I wanted to see if there's anybody in the audience that has a question for any of the panelists. Anybody?
Someone's raising his
I
hand.
see you. Please stand up.
I think there's the mic.
Do you have a microphone? Or you can talk loudly.
Thanks. Martin Grammatic of Hill. I have a question to all of you, all very interesting innovations. But what will be your advice in terms of the business model? Because you need money and revenue to continue. So apart from the funders, what advice you will give to new aspiring innovators? Thanks.
He always ends up with the microphone, so I'm sorry, you're going to have to go first again.
Don't return this to me after this. I think this has been a discussion in our organization way back. We were thinking about adopting a business model where we could actually profit from, well, Facebook. We're in Facebook, and Facebook uses monetization to give, to earn. And we were thinking that if we could actually have earnings from our Facebook views or from our Facebook lives, we might be able to subsidize and continue our operation and expand its reach. I think that's one thing, if ever that we haven't resolved it yet, but the idea is we could incorporate ethical business models in our non-profit activities.
For us, I don't think a business could be the thing because it's for very vulnerable people. So I don't feel like we have like a business thing here for the answer.
So remember I talked about access to income, and one of the bigger components of the program that I did not focus more was socioeconomic resilience. So we have got over 16,000 young people within the 5 years who are grouped in solidarity. And among them, if you put their income together, they do different businesses. I hope my colleague can help me. 900 million Burundian francs, how much is it in dollars? Divide by 2,000. 900 million divided by 2,000, you get the figures in US dollars. So this is the asset they have in terms of monetary. And also, when you look at the other income in terms of plots of land or goats or all the other assets, you are getting to some billions Burundian francs. So what we did, we invited the microfinances, and we present them the data that we have, and we show them how much our youth have. So from now on, some of these youth have been able to access income, microfinances, loan to build up businesses. And the idea is that they will continue to work beyond the program, and they can continue to work on their income-generating activities as they do dialogue and other activities that unite them. And you know what they said? The economic benefit is really very important than political or some ethnic gains. So that on its own, the young people that we have are making income, and they can continue to actually work without our presence in the communities. I don't know if you got the figures. How much? 450,000 in cash, dollars in cash, and also if you put the other asset like gold, you are getting even more than that. Thank you.
Look, from our perspective, the program is commercially funded. It's paid for by the buyers. There is certainly an aspect to that, which is then demonstrating how that's value creating for them beyond the buyers from a consumer-facing perspective. But there are also broader issues in here about the economic models of supply chains and demand cycles and payment cycles and a whole range of other aspects that we're also looking to address as we evolve, and they're part of the remediation solutions we're working to develop.
I don't know if I got you right. If you're looking at business model and sustainability in that breadth, how to get money or funds beyond donors, then we are looking at some of us are within this, we are social entrepreneurs. We are not profit making, and that is why there are priests and there are imams. There are people who are into business and profit. There are people who are into non-profit. Our passion is what carries us. And so if you are able to know and understand your business model, which is social entrepreneur, you will definitely be able to talk to the right people to attract the needed funding to move along. Whilst you're doing that, you also build your capacity and add technology for sustainability. And that is what we are doing. So in an event where there isn't funding, the structures and the technology put into the work we do will be able to still continue to bring the impact that we are looking for. So I would say that it depends on the kind of job you're doing or an individual, but concentrate on what the passion is, make it attractive. And as we sit here, World Justice Project has been able to open their light, zoom all the way from the world to Africa, to Ghana, to the corridors, to be able to pick a project like Justice for All. When they put it out there, it will attract the needed attention for people to also help in the process and expand. So that is what I believe in. Sell your passion, make it a big deal, and then you will get the support to be able to push. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank all of you and also our audience, because it's so important for you to hear these projects. Remind you that tomorrow will be the World Justice Challenge Award ceremony. It will be at 4:15, and there will be one award for one of the Access to Justice projects will win a $20,000 prize. I think what we've seen here is really quite remarkable, and their advice is something I'm going to take with me when I leave, which is ask questions and don't assume. Really one of the most important parts of these projects. Leverage technology, build on your assets, local solutions for local problems. Don't get swallowed up by the project. Accept best practices, but tailor those to the culture and to the people. And I think one of the last ones was the old Nike slogan is just do it. And they have just done it. So I think all of us should be in awe of their creativity, the success of these projects, and the heart and passion. So we thank you so much. Amazing group of people. So open your hearts, open your minds, open your pocketbooks if you're a funder. Thank you.
Thank you.